All right. Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:10 p.m. Central. And listen to United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. We got Wham here with us. We got William Hall. Bill's here with us. And we're talking about his book, getting into some ghost stuff and all kinds of other things. And let's see real quick who's coming up on the schedule. I'd like to go over that. We just had Carter Bashard. That was really good. Man, he's been on a good bit, but it's from BFRO. But the funniest part of that interview, oh, God. I have to tell this one for Wham for sure, but Carter, and he's like the coolest dude ever, and I believe he's genuinely, having experiences. But this thing that he said that happened when he regressed, I'm not saying I don't believe it, but it took me, a second take on it. But basically, he said in the past life he was a woman who witnessed the Jack the Ripper murder, and he went into it, and it was just, he's very believable, and one of the coolest dudes ever with cases. Like, I think he's definitely a genuine article. But when he said that, I mean, my first reaction is to comedy, react to it. But anyway, I had to ask the question. I go, so who is Jack the Ripper? And he went into some spiel about all the DNA stuff that's new, and then we got into H.H. Holmes, but I don't think he thinks H.H. Holmes is Jack the Ripper. But it was just funny, but that was a funny part of it. But anywho, I love your book, Bill. I love your first book, and I got it right here. I have to keep it in the envelope so the cats won't do nothing to it. The Bridgeport Poltergeist on Lindley Street, 5th anniversary. Investigator Companion, Guide Photos and Archives, William J. Hall. Now, what got you involved in this case? What was the catalyst?
Well, the catalyst was not the Wall Street Journal, it was Facebook. Growing up, though, I grew up in Bridgeport where it happened. So I heard about it for years. I didn't know any of the details, of course, but it was just a famous haunted house, so to speak. And then one day I saw this must have been 2013 or something. I saw a Facebook post of the house. And they said, does anybody remember the haunting on Lindley Street? And it occurred to me that I never really looked into it. I was asked about it when I was out doing magic shows. People even asked, is that real? And I said, well, I don't really know anything about it, other than that they say it's haunted. I never even saw any newspaper articles on it. I was 10 when it happened, so, there's that. But now with Google, I decided, I'm curious. Let me look into that a little bit. And when I saw the newspaper articles and I saw the quotes from police officers and firefighters, it occurred to me that this was something that definitely was worth looking into. And that even if it wasn't real, it looked like it was a heck of a story. So that got me going down the rabbit hole.
And sorry if you heard any weird breathing as dogs. I'm like, we all quit it. But what were some of the things that the firefighters and police said about it? I mean, and how were they involved in it? That was like the after case of it, like when they investigated or something there?
Well, it actually was at the very height of it. The police got into it because when the Gooden family returned, which was three of them, which was Laura and Jerry, the parents, and little Marcy, who was just about to turn 10 years old. When they returned from a trip on the weekend, they came back to the house, and that's when all hell literally broke loose. The chairs were opening and closing. They had those heavy 1970s recliner chairs, and they were opening and closing by themselves, and table flipped over, and things were going crazy. So they went out to the porch hysterical and got the attention of the neighbor's daughter walking the dog and said, "You go get your father. We need help." And that was John Holsworth, who was actually an off-duty police officer and friend of theirs. And he came over to the house and he said, "Don't worry, stay out here." And he goes in there and he sees the TV floating and the chairs opening and closing. He thought maybe they were being robbed or something. He didn't know what the issue was. But when he saw that, he didn't know what to do, so he called it in. The family actually never called the police, but he called in and said, "I'm off duty, but I'm over here, and there's stuff happening." And so he called it in, and that's when the police arrived, and they witnessed things, including the refrigerator floating, and they didn't know what to do, so they called the fire department. And so this is how it escalated from the initial police, then the police calling the fire department, then the fire department calling the city inspectors, trying to figure out the source of these weird things happening in the home. And of course, the more they ran out of the house taking notes and going back in and things like that, the more attention it got. And eventually, of course, crowds and the media followed. But that's kind of how it all escalated with the authorities. And there was quite a few fire engines that showed up, and police cars and whatnot. So it was quite a spectacle.
And what was some of the history of the house? Like, was it, what happened there? Was there something before everything, like burial grounds? I mean, what do we know about the history of it?
Well, there is an underground spring, so that's something. But there's nothing in the history of the house other than, of course, some say this half jokingly. Bob Crane actually lived there for a bit when he was a DJ. The guy from Hogan's Heroes. But no, the house didn't have any activity before or after, as far as we know. Certainly, I think with the right family in there, the right dynamics, you certainly could have something like that happening again. But there's no activity that we know of that happened before, other than the lead up of the natural poltergeist incident, which did have a big catalyst through Marcy.
Did you say floating TVs and refrigerators? Like actually floating? That's a lot of strength for something to pick that up. Like even a ghost, that's some heavy lifting.
Yes, it was. The activity was so heavy that usually in these cases, whether it's poltergeist or any kind of entity type of thing, when new people enter the room or whatever, it normally calms down before you're going to see something happen again. And this stuff was happening with a crowded house, so it really was unusually heavy activity. And the refrigerator would float up about 6 to 8 inches, and then it would turn a little bit on an angle and come back down, or it would go across the floor and end up like in front of the door, or right at the end of the. So it would do that, and the officers, they did a great job of investigating it. I mean, they didn't run away or scream ghost. They tipped the fridge over. They went down to the basement. They were trying to figure out the source of it. They didn't necessarily know what was causing it. So I was impressed at the way that they went about looking at the things that they saw too.
Was there any apparition seen or any like bodies, like physical forms and things like that?
Yes, in a gauzy gauzy-like shapes, as Paulino described them. And they came out, got behind Paul, who had Marcy behind him, and picked up Marcy and threw her across the room. That was one incident where there was visible entities, if you will. Another was in the basement where this cloudy figure formed, and that Father Charbonneau, who was there with the Warrens, he saw it, and then Ed saw it too in the basement. That was another incident. And then there was a part where the entire house filled up with this gauzy, like smoke kind of thing. And Paul had them all actually leave the house because it was just too much, got too strong.
That was the only family that had any experiences there, or did the actor guy have any that you heard of, or anyone else, or just that family?
No, just the family. Although it's not atypical in poltergeist cases. It's more like a haunted family than a haunted house. Even though the publisher liked the title and they pick it, not me, but but that does happen. Although, like I said, I think if you got the right people in there or the wrong people, then maybe you could have a resurgence of something.
And definitely, what was the final outcome or the story of the family? Did they end up moving? What happened? What was the final catalyst of it for the family?
Well, the family, they tried to move, but nobody would buy the house. So they actually ended up staying there. Marcy left when she was 18 because she didn't get along with the mother, which was part of the whole catalyst of the poltergeist activity. Because they adopted her when she was about 4. And she was later on picked on in school and beat up at school, and then was stuck at home with the mother in the tiny house. And it was after that the activity all exploded. And but yeah, they tried everything. They tried to paint the house, and then that got in the newspaper. Family paints the house.
It's crazy. Yeah. Blew up in the media. Were the Warrens involved with that one or something?
Yes, yeah. They were called in by Mary Pasquarella, who was a member of one of the psychic groups down in New Haven. I forget the name of it. She saw the fire engines and police cars and whatnot, and heard what was going on, and called Ed and said, "You got to come down here. There's a real bad poltergeist case." And he said, "Well, we're kind of busy. I mean, is this like the real deal? How do you know it's the real deal?" And she goes, "Yeah, there's police cars out here. There's fire engines out here. There's crowd of people. There's this, that." And he's like, "What?" Sounds like the real deal. So they picked up Father Charbonneau, and Paulino ended up, he was on the way over there to have dinner, which he was looking forward to because Lorraine was an amazing cook, as the story goes. He ended up getting a flat tire, and he got there just in time to go with them to Lindley Street. So that's how they all arrived. And then the Goodins, they had never heard of the Warrens, but they so far had multiple people try to help, and no one's been able to do anything. So they said, "Well, if you think you could help, come on in." But that's how they got involved in
it. No, there's a lot of controversy about the Warrens. I don't know enough about it to speak about it too much, but a lot of things like on the fence with it being genuine and things. And I don't know, I've seen so many different things and opinions about it. It's hard to keep up with it all, but
Yeah, I mean, the good thing I can say about this case, and I don't consider it a Warren's case, even though they were very much there during some of the height of it. But the story starts a lot sooner and ends a lot later than their involvement. But I could say in the case of Lindley Street, um, they didn't do anything. Um, what I would say, abnormal or faking anything I mean, there was no need to with what was going on. No. I think the Warrens controversy comes into place, quite frankly, when it comes to the books. When you get a big advance and, you have a ghostwriter and you tell them to go interview these people and tell the story, make it scary and stuff, and I think that's where you get into that. That's my personal opinion. Just knowing from the publishing side, if something goes wrong during that process, you still got a hand in a book. So that I don't know about that, but I can say for Lindley Street, they didn't do anything wrong, except some could argue. I mean, um, Ed called in more media, although you can argue that the AP wire would have showed up anyhow because the media was there before the Warrens ever showed up. But he did escalate it by calling in, the AP wire. But in his defense, this was one of those cases where he thought this would finally convince people about the reality of the paranormal, because this was getting there. They had no answers, and more people were going there to help and seeing the activity. So this was the big, the big breakthrough case. Kind of the Roswell of haunted houses.
What's going on with the house now? Is it still there? Who's in it now?
Yes, there's a family in it now, and they're aware of. Matter of fact, I want to give them a call and get them my book if they don't have it, because they're newer owners in my mind. I remember the little old lady, Portuguese woman who lived there for many years, who was, of course, unaware of the haunting or anything else. But yeah, there's a family that lives there now, and I don't believe they have any issues. Uh, Although if they did, I doubt they would say so, because the house, even to this day, still gets a lot of attention and drive-bys.
Did any murders happen there or anything that we know of? Anything like that?
No, no, no. The house, as far as history, seems to be okay. Other than there being underground spring, sandy soil, high water tables, things like that people say have something to do with all that energy. But obviously, there's a missing component that we don't know. That's a $6 million question.
Was
But
there anything weird with the family, like some trauma? Like I've had some UFO stuff and ghost stuff, and I've had trauma from testicular cancer when I was 17 and stuff. And I think that my dad dying and the trauma was something that brought that kind of stuff. Was there anything weird with the family or anything that could have brought it on?
oh yes, there was a lot with the family. They had a son, Jerry Jr., who died when he was 6. He had cerebral palsy and multiple sclerosis. No, I'm sorry, Down syndrome, and I believe either cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis. I don't know if they actually diagnosed him or diagnosed him properly at the time, but he couldn't walk by himself, and they had to, really baby him up until he was 6, when he died of a high fever. And so after that devastation, some time goes by and they adopt this little girl, Marcy, and they basically smother her. She can't go anywhere by herself, and that's okay when she's 4. But I'm talking even right before these incidents happen. When she's 7, 8, 9. Walking her to school, can't go to a friend's house by herself. So she ended up not having many friends as a result of that, and not getting along well with the mother. And she was shy, um, embarrassed, of course, with the mother, and picked on in school. And that for about a year. And then after that was beat up in the cafeteria. A boy beat her up, and she was home in a soft body brace, and had to be homeschooled, stuck there in the little house with the mother. And that's what I was saying before. After about 6 weeks of that, um, isolation in a little house with the mother and everything going on, that's when the poltergeist activity really started, really came to a head. There were some early signs of activity, though. Back in 1971, it became public November 1974, but back in 1971, there were these pounding sounds on the insides and the outsides of the wall, and they would kind of follow the family room to room if they went room to room. Jerry thought it was an animal. He thought it was the neighbors because they owned a motorcycle. It was the 70s, so I don't know. I guess that was a bad thing. They thought maybe it was construction. They didn't know what it was, but all those things were eliminated. Jerry even took pipes apart thinking there was an animal somewhere. But the sounds were one thing. And then there were some other things happening, like keys being left one place and appearing somewhere else. A chair that was in, out now, a door that was open now closed, all those kinds of little simmering things. But it really exploded that November of 74 when it became very public.
Well, I think there's things that are parasitical that things like the kind of things you mentioned. And I know some things that I went through a lot of weird bully situations when I was younger, and a abusive father. And then that led to testicular cancer, and then him dying, and then all this weird haunted, UFO stuff. So there's something to it. And I think that trauma too can open you up. But I think also it's like a bait for hungry, weird things that like to eat it, the energy. And I think even to this day, I still deal with that kind of thing and trying to keep those kind of things away, like that, like something just parasitical that likes that kind of stuff. And I guess a lot of that haunting stuff. I know a guest has mentioned someone going through haunted things, and then they started to do different things in their life, like go to a soup kitchen and help and do more positive things, and that got rid of it and stuff like that. So there's proof that there's something to that on some level, getting rid of the negative.
Agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. And definitely using Paul's, I call it Paul's lingo, but the parasite's a perfect word for these things. I don't know if I'd call them evil, negative, yes, or at least behaving that way. But I like to have an open mind and think that they're on the spectrum like we are. And they might feed on that negative energy, but I'm not sure that they're entirely negative. I'm not saying they're positive. I'm just saying, I'd like to keep an open door to say, because there's this intermix of worlds, if you will, it's tough to tell what situation they're in, or what the heck they're after, but they certainly seem to appear to feed on it, to feed on those negative emotions.
Yeah, and I think they can manipulate people. I mean, like Amityville, and not to say every murder is manipulated by a demon, but I think they can. There's things that can manipulate people, and that's what they try to do. But it definitely sucks trying to keep the dog noise down. But my brother just came home. But But what was I gonna? Oh yeah. So did you ever go to the house or around the house? How's the closest you've got to this thing?
Well, yes, I went to the house. I didn't go inside, um, but that's when the little old Portuguese woman lived there. And I knocked on the door many times. At first, I thought it was unoccupied, because you'd go to the house and there was this lock around the the fence gate, the front fence gate. And so it looked like nobody went in or out, and it was hard to tell. But then, from my book Facebook page, it's funny because people were reporting to me on what they saw, and finally somebody did see somebody. It was a lady who only exits through the back. I had knocked on the door many times, but she probably was scared of me. As a matter of fact, when I thought no one lived there, I was walking on the property, peeking through windows and stuff. And later on, she talked to, I guess, a neighbor, because I talked to one of the neighbors. And she told him that some guy was on the property trying to rob her. So I scared the poor lady when I was writing the book originally. So yeah, that's as close as I got. So I've been there many times on the outside, but I am going to contact the new owners to see if I could get in the inside and give them a copy of the book, and.
And in a lot of your stuff, what have you had any paranormal encounters come up?
No, other than cases I've investigated, but myself personally, my place is pretty dull when it comes to that, unfortunately. Because it would be a nice way to write a book if I had an active place and I could just stay in one place and write as it happens.
What about we can get into a little bit, but the Phantom Phone Call book? That was an interesting one for sure. I believe we did an interview on that one too. I believe, yeah. But what was the name of that book again? That was about the
Phantom Messages. Yes.
Yeah.
It was kind of a full spectrum, obviously inspired by the phone calls from the dead, and thinking, well, there's this kind of stuff that happens throughout the paranormal specter, whether it's UFOs, and I especially liked the fact that we went after cases that were nobody was trying to communicate. In other words, this just happened to them. And a lot of it happened outside of a haunting. Some of them happened within hauntings, but we tried to give a spectrum to show that these kinds of communications were happening. And we went for the unexpected ones, the phone calls that you get that you don't expect, versus walking around with the EVP and stuff, which, I'm guilty of wanting to do that too. But those kinds of things, and some were quite fascinating. The one that just I can't get out of my head is this guy David. He receives these phone calls on his cell phone. They're 3 minutes long exactly, and it's just sound, and it's the sound of wind and metal banging together and people screaming, and he feels this feeling of just sheer horror, like he's not listening to a TV or something, but he feels like it's real. And this he keeps getting these phone calls, 3 minutes each, the same phone call, and he can't trace the number and stuff. Finally, he gets rid of that phone, gets a different phone, and it stops for a while until the morning of 9/11. He gets a phone call, same message, 3 minutes long, and an hour later the towers fall, and of course he's practically in shock. One other part to that story was that he had played this message for some other people without telling them, just to see if what they thought of it. And they reacted the same way, as if they instinctively knew that this was a real thing. He played it for them before 9/11, before anybody knew what it might be. And one lady even fainted. So that's an example of a real shocking, and are they calls from the future, or are they calls from the past? uh, from the future, that kind of thing, with time being irrelevant, so to speak, in that case. But that was a fascinating example of a phantom message. Sometimes they even have some sort of telltale to them um, when someone's hearing an event happen. Those are fascinating ones.
What did it seem? What was them? Uh-oh, I'm hearing a weird breakup or something that was weird. But what were most of the messages like when they spoke and stuff? I mean, what were they trying to say? Was it what was there something, a common denominator that would come up?
No, there were different types. There was kind of like your friends and loved ones. That's one aspect of it. The other is just weird communications, in which case is it UFO related, which some of them were. We use example of like some of the Mothman prophecy messages and stuff. So there were different types of messages, but I didn't find any prevailing message like in the loved ones area. There wasn't a lot of commonality, like every single person said there's a bright light or something. There wasn't anything like that. And a lot of times the calls were almost as if they were just regular phone calls, um, regular chat. Like one case where the lady's mother was dead would call every day at the same time and just have these regular conversations. Um, and it happened, I think, for about a year, and then they finally stopped. But quite fascinating when it comes out like that.
What was the I see on the Amazon description of the book, exclusive fantasy horror carnival artwork? What was that?
Oh, I think I sent that to you too. That's in the new photos and archive book, which is
You did.
yeah, 50th anniversary collection of some color photos from the case, or all the photos they have from the case, and some witness interviews, um, so that you can read some of the interviews that were done in the case. But
And
that's what that's about, though.
cool. And I mean, it's basically a companion book to your other book about the same thing, right? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you have the book on the case, or you get them together, or if you have the book on the case, this new one has photos and stuff for you to dig deeper and read the witness interviews and stuff.
and I'm looking through your other stuff on Amazon. Is that the best place for everybody to go? Is just Amazon, or do you have a website or anything?
Yes, I personally signed copies you can get at halloftheparanormal.com. That's HALL of theparanormal.com. Um, and I'd be happy to sign it, and I send extra stuff. So that's the best place to go.
And we'll get more into the book, but one thing I wanted to ask you about: how did the illusionist thing start? That's a unique profession for sure.
Oh,
Illusionist.
well, when I was about 7, I saw a magician performed, and I told my dad I wanted to do that, and he said I'd starve, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I just wanted to do the miracle. So I forced him to drive me to like the world's only magic shop near my house, which was probably about an hour away. Now I forced him to drive me there, and buy me a new miracle every week, usually with my money, but still. Um, and so I'm happy he drove me there. Of course, he always reminded me that I have to make the miracles happen. They don't happen themselves. You got to practice, because you'd always buy it, and then you get home and you'd be like, wait a minute, but how does it disappear by itself? It's like, no, I got to do it. So, but that started my love of magic, and I continued doing it. And at one point, it was about half my, half my job, half my income. But when I was doing quite a lot of shows. And then I got involved in the Society of American Magicians Psychic Investigation Committee, but we mostly got all we got were frauds. So the nature of the beast. But I wish they would go more into the paranormal, because that was Houdini's issue, is, he attracted the fakers. And whereas if I think he was, he wanted to find it, but he was looking in the wrong places, and he attracted the fakers. I think it would have been interesting if he spent the same amount of time looking at haunted houses, because he was willing to put in the time. That was one thing about him. As skeptical as he was, he wouldn't have gone that deep into it. And I know for a fact he was trying to find it himself, which is why he had that death code and all that other stuff. But
What were some of the things that you would do in your stage acting? I mean, what would you do? I mean, an example.
I would do, I did fire reading, actually. I did fire reading. I did ventriloquism. I did one of Houdini's tricks, one of the few tricks he did that I could afford, which was the mummy rope escape, which is a fun one where a bunch of people tie you up. And you always get the strongest guys in the room, much stronger than you, tie you up, and you have to get out of it. In a time, you only have 2 minutes to get out of it. And I did that really good, except there was one church event I had where I swear to God, they tied me worse than anybody else. I thought they were trying to kill me. Anyhow, so I would do that. Quite a lot of stuff, vanishes, mind reading. I used to love to float items. That was always a fascination. Any psychokinetic trick was my genre. I love that stuff.
Fire reading. Wow, I didn't expect that one.
Yeah.
And so, what about the ventriloquism? Do you have any haunted dolls, or what did you use? What was it? What kind of puppet did you have?
It was a wizard puppet. I called him Wizzy the Wizard, and I actually used them in adult shows and kid shows. So for obviously a little bit different routine, but and yeah, it was a wizard puppet made by a lady who ended up landing a big job at some big toy company too.
Nice.
Yeah.
So did you actually not move your mouth at all when you did it? Did you were that good at it?
Oh yeah. No, don't. How you doing there? Yeah.
Wow.
You know, no. Yeah. Oh, Chet. Boy, Chet.
I always think of that.
But you have the puppet and everything, and then I used to do the drinking while singing, and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I always think of the Anthony Hopkins Magic movie every time I think of it.
Yes, yeah. I always wanted one of the, I wanted one of the real. I was going to, but I wanted to get a $400 one, and I never did. So I stuck with my my wizard, but I still have them to this day, and you just can't throw something like that out. I mean, that thing, that wizard has been in hundreds and hundreds of shows, probably over 1,000 shows.
Nice.
He's my buddy now. Oh, that's a little weird.
And is he locked in?
As long as he doesn't move, we'll get along just fine.
Is he in a coffin locked in concrete in your basement?
Yeah, right.
But If you want some fun, look on eBay sometime. Ventriloquist dummy just to look for fun, and that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of weird old stuff on there. I've
Oh,
never bought one, but I like to look through them. I would if I found one, but I've looked through Alien. Like you can put an alien puppet, and a lot of weird stuff will come up.
oh yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
always ordered the It's Alive baby. The It's Alive movies.
yeah. Roger Corman, yeah.
Yeah, I like the baby. So
Yeah, I need to watch those again. I watched Basket Case again recently.
oh, yeah, classic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful for sure. I know you're talking about Street Trash. Is that the new one? I haven't seen it yet, but are you into kind of like weird movies? Like that's
Oh
your
yeah,
thing?
yeah, sure. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of different kinds of movies, but yeah, I mean, I definitely like those.
Yeah, I want to see the new Toxic Avenger with Peter Dinklage. That's the one I'm excited to. Though it's probably going to be grotesque on some level because it went through a rating situation where they didn't want to release it. I mean, I guess it was going to be like rated X or something.
Oh my
So
God.
they had to tone it down or NC-17. I don't know the whole story, but I know it was supposed. It came out like a couple of years ago, and it never came out. Like they made it, but it just never made it. But and the new Nosferatu, I like that. It was even the Nosferatu had a mustache. He was kind of a Vlad the Impaler type Nosferatu, which is who that supposedly is anyway on some level. But he looked more Vlad the Impaler ish. But it
Yeah.
was good. It was good. Uh, Compared to most crap that comes out, it was a masterpiece. There's just so much crap.
Yeah, I know. I
Like
know.
like if you want to watch a good comedy movie, it's like there's not really any hardly. There's some, but not anything new. Like I've been watching old John Candy stuff. It's like you got to go to the 80s. Just
No, that's
trash.
true. Yeah. I don't know. We need some good movies out. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I've been watching a lot of those East Down and Bound and what else? Righteous Gemstones on HBO. They're kind of nasty, but they're funny. It's got John Goodman in it, Righteous Gemstones and Danny McBride. They're funny, but they can be a little raunchy. It's HBO. But my experiences of ghosts, I've seen them, and most of the time when you do see them, it terrifies you. But most of the times I've been sober and seen things, but I've also in my younger days partied and seen things with friends. So I've been in different states of consciousness, but one of my big ones has been light beings. I've seen those a lot, but lately I don't see much of anything. I don't think they like me much anymore. Maybe they'll surprise me again, like Cocoon when I'm older. But it seems to have calmed down. Mostly just feel the weird things. Like I think there's parasitical things around everyone. I think they're more because of all the political weirdness. It's like they're just wanting a nuke to go off so they can feast, and they're like gathering around.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't doubt it. I mean, that just
Yeah,
makes sense. As the tensions rise, that gives off the right frequencies for these things.
and America seems to be where it's happening right now because it's just insane. It's so insane. I just can't even like find words for it.
Yeah.
Like a weird dystopian nightmare. But and then of course we just had the whole I guess the Mercury retrograde started, and then the blood eclipse was last night. I
Mercury
slept,
retrograde actually starts overnight.
so tonight, and then the blood eclipse was last night. Right, I slept through
Yeah,
that.
yep. I actually saw it. I woke up at 3 o'clock because I always wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning for some reason, and that's when it was at its height. So I got up and went into my office and peered out the window, and there it was. And then I went back to bed.
Oh wow, perfect timing.
Yeah, it's like went back to. I said, oh, I mean, I've seen full lunar eclipses a number of times. They're always interesting though, because you know, I guess it was April of last year that we had the full solar eclipse, and I got to see that too. So that was That was fun.
Was it blood red?
Oh, you mean the lunar
moon?
eclipse? No,
Yeah.
it's always more of a pink, kind of orange, peachy color, sort of. It's not. I don't know why they call it blood red. It's not blood red.
Yeah. Did you have any weird dreams or feel weird from seeing
Oh,
it?
nah. Not at all. I mean, the coolest lunar eclipse I ever saw was many years ago when I lived in a very rural area, and it happened to be in the winter time when it was happening. And we had just, where I lived, we had just gotten 14 inches of snow. So we were like, snowbound because they hadn't plowed our street yet. But like it was the evening after the storm, it cleared out, and it was like bitterly cold, as it would be whenever it's snowed and then it becomes clear, all the heat can leave the planet. And we had a field that was right next to our house. And so I decided I would go out and look at it. It was like maybe about 10:30 or 11 at night. And I went out, and it was really cold. It was so cold. But I went out, and because of the snow everywhere and the moon being this odd color, it made I lived in this valley. It made the entire valley this bizarre color. The snow reflected what light there was.
Oh,
It
that's
looked it looked like another planet, really. And then as I was out there, I mean, I was so in awe of it that even though I was freezing, I was standing out there, and then I saw this movement in the field next to me, and it was a stag. It was like a huge deer, a stag, with a full rack of antlers, and he just walked out into the middle of the field and just stood there. So here it was. It was like, whoa. And then it was just like these moments. I didn't want to leave, even though I was freezing to death, and because it looked so cool. And then all of a sudden, it was like something startled him, and he just sort of jumped and he ran off. And I was like, well, I'm going to go in now because I'm really cold. But so that's, I mean, it was cool last night, but it wasn't that cool. It wasn't as cool as that sighting. So, that's like the second lunar eclipse, full lunar eclipse that I've seen in this house. The other was a few years ago, but they're interesting. I mean, celestial things like that are always interesting.
yeah.
They're always fun.
Although I did sleep through it too.
Well, it's like at 3 a.m, and like I said, I usually wake up around 2:33 anyway. For some reason, that's just a time when I wake up.
Yeah. It's cool. I've seen pictures of it, and it looks sort of rusty color. Just rusty. Some reason I'm thinking of Dan Aykroyd and in that documentary, Dan Aykroyd, UFOs Unplugged. I think they were sleeping and had some UFO stuff, him and his wife. That was pretty interesting. If you've ever seen that documentary, it's free on YouTube. It's, the actor Dan Aykroyd, UFOs Unplugged.
No, I knew he was like really involved in the paranormal, and
Yeah.
I didn't know he had an experience himself. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's David Cerrito, which I haven't watched anything of his in a while except that, but I like that one. Dan Aykroyd smoking a cigar talking about UFOs.
Yeah,
You can get any better than that.
no.
I'm not the biggest MUFON fan. That's my only discretion, but other than that, I still like Dan Aykroyd, but I haven't even seen him in any movies. He was in some Goosebumps things. I haven't watched it, but that's the last thing that I knew of that he was in.
Yeah.
Some movie about zombies.
Fun.
But yeah, I've been watching old John Candy stuff. It's weird watching stuff like that now. I remember, all the Chevy Chase stuff and John Candy and all these movies are so different now. They've changed so much.
definitely. Yeah, it's weird because at the time, everything is so current and new and fresh and fast paced and everything, and then you watch it now and you're like, wow, that was kind of really slow pace. Yeah, so,
Have you got into the Terrifier movies yet?
no.
Those are really good. They're great, and they broke all kinds of box office situations. Like, it's become really big. It even beat Joker 2 at the box office, which I didn't like Joker 2. The first one was okay, with Joaquin Phoenix, but that second one was terrible. But it even Terrifier 3 beat Joker 2. But they're on Screenbox, all three of them. And a friend of mine, which he's on my Facebook, and he's the actor. Sometimes he stops by and says stuff about Trump on my page, anti-Trump, of course, which I don't have a problem with that. But and I just told everybody on Facebook I have a group called Fuhrer Shitbird von Trumpelgooch. So hopefully I don't go to a concentration camp for that. But anyway, he I know. I was like, should I delete this now?
It's like we're all worried about that now. What is weird? What is weird is that I was looking back at some, like, I keep a dream journal, and I every now and then I'll go back and I'll look at dreams from like a year ago, 2 years ago, or whatever, just to kind of
Cool.
see
do
like, yeah, just to see if like if there were any patterns or anything like that. And about this time last year, I had a dream, and this is of course like, Biden is still president and everything. I had a dream that there was a fascist takeover, and that they were rounding people up in Gestapo style, but it was kind of haphazard. In the dream, it was kind of haphazard, which made it a little more scary because you never knew exactly who they were going to nab. It's like it got to a point where it wasn't just any particular group or something. But anyway, in the dream there was a lot of confusion and I mean, and this kind of stuff. And then, but there were like these interesting moments where at one point I looked out a window. I was trying to decide whether I should flee or not, or and some people were telling me to flee and some people were telling me to stay. And then at some point I had this, in the dream I saw this like crowd of Hasidic Jews, with the funny puffy hats, and they were like in a row, like a chorus line, and they were floating down a hill. It was like they were chanting and floating down a hill, and it was like I realized that they were targets too, but their response to that was kind of this interesting kind of, it was kind of like it was like a spiritual dance or something. It was odd. It was just really a strange dream, and I read that like a couple days ago, and I was like, that's really weird. I mean, it's not that I think it's automatically going to happen that way. It's just interesting that a year ago I had a dream with those kinds of fears stuck in them. It was just odd,
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have to write them down right away, right?
Right. I try to write them down pretty quick.
Yeah. Because I know I forget. Not all of them. Some stick with you, but I hate when I forget it. I'm like, wait, I know it was good, and it was something about this, and I just can't get the details back.
Yeah, and sometimes the details you do get back. I mean, sometimes, like, I'll go back to sleep and I'll wake up and I'll just remember like fragments. And I'll write the fragments down too, because sometimes if I write those down, then I'll remember a little bit more, or like later in the day, because I remember the fragments, I'll remember a little bit more. I've been working with my dreams for years. I mean, since I was a child, really. And it was just an odd dream, I mean, it was just odd. I mean, I think that having a Gestapo-like situation is a fear that everybody has to some degree, because we know what that is. You know what I mean? I mean, we have the language for that. So that's kind of where everybody's brain goes. But I think that there could be things that could be even more insidious than that in some ways.
Yeah, I've always wanted to watch the thing on Amazon. I always forget its name. It's Philip K. Dick. It's kind of like Fatherland or something. I'd have to look up the name, but it's like the Nazis win, and it's like a fictional historical drama situation where I guess the whole thing is. I haven't watched it yet, but I'd have to look it up. But I know it's on Amazon. Ridley Scott. I mean, not Ridley Scott. Philip K. Dick. Look it up real quick. Series. Electric Dreams, and that's not the one. That's something else. I'll find it, but I was just looking at it. But anyway, it's one of those situations like a historical drama where I guess the Nazis won and stuff like that. But it's like a sci-fi thing. So what's on the agenda next, Bill? What are you eyeballing?
Well, I am quite fascinated with the stories of those little skeletons and little people found in the desert, things like that. I don't know if there's enough there, but little things and some cryptids too. So I'm thinking about writing about that, but I have to do more research into it to see what's out there. But and also trolls are a fascination. I don't know why that's come up, but I've seen it in multiple places now, and all of these are individuals that they're not rereading the same thing. And I had a case where I interviewed people who had these troll sightings in the house, and certain characteristics and aspects of that were repeated in two other books that had encounters in there. So that fascinated me. Like there's something to it. They describe it as a troll. I'm not saying they are troll. You know what I'm saying?
What is the general appearance that is a troll? What does it they look like normally?
They describe them as small and very, very ugly, very ugly. That's usually just to define you, just incredibly ugly and short.
I always get reminded of this one encounter, and I'll tell it to you. Try to be quick with it. There was one encounter I had with a friend named Brian, and I saw 3 small cloaked beings in the woods, and they were maybe about 3 foot tall and kind of skinny, and they reminded me of Jawas, but not as fat as Jawas, and you couldn't see their faces, and they were just standing there, and the weirdest thing, there was a black box at their feet. And then we both said, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And both agreed that we saw it. And then a black cat jumped towards them and they vanished. And at that time, I had been reading some Celtic otherworld kind of druid kind of stuff, just reading it. Maybe that brought it on. We were kind of partying. Not going to get into it too deeply, but when that happened, and that could open up the consciousness. But we both agreed that we saw it, and it was definitely weird. I know I've seen those little Stephen Greer mummies, and I don't know if those are real or not. Those are the crap with him, or with the little mummies, and I'm like, maybe that's what was under those cloaks or whatever. And then they remind me of the little phantasm things, but those are more shorter and fatter.
Yeah. It's funny though that in the troll cases they do appear in threes. Usually one on top of the other, kind of.
Whoa, like stack.
Yeah, like stack, like they're stacking.
Oh, that's weird. Like a
and,
totem pole.
Yeah, and one dragged a little girl from her bed, and they even moved with the family. The family moved because of them, moved to a different place, and they were at the new place.
Trolls. What if I saw trolls? That's a new one.
And the family was one of my close friends. It was his wife's side of the family. So like I knew and trusted them, and when I heard all their story, and they told the stories individually too, and the brother and sister both saw them growing up and never told each other until one Thanksgiving. They both said, "Oh, you mean you saw him too?" And but so that stuff that's really fascinating me now that I mean, it was fascinating enough just that one case, but now that I'm finding there's others that have this vein to it, that really fascinates me. I don't know what they are, but I call them trolls for lack of a better word.
I've never heard about the stacking thing. Have you, Wham, have one of them on top of each other? That's kind of strange. I've never heard of that.
I've heard of stuff like that actually.
Stackable trolls.
I believe it's a troll legend.
Yeah, I've heard of stuff like that. I mean, it's like I've also heard of like little people stacks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's basically what they are, is little people, very ugly. That's
ugly to us. They may be charming to each other. It's
exactly. I don't mean that in a disparaging way. It's just that's the way people describe them. Is and so ugly.
Kind of knobbly.
Yeah, it's just not frightening. Not ghastly, not this, not that, but ugly. They specifically use.
Are you familiar with that artist Brian Froud? That does all the fairy art and stuff. I think he definitely is drawing those things from somewhere.
Yeah.
I think he did some of the Dark Crystal stuff maybe, but he has a bunch of art books that are really cool. And tarot, I have some tarot that are worth some money from Brian Froud, Froud, but his art of the fairies and stuff, it's haunting, some weirdness to that for sure.
There's some beautiful art on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he definitely is pulling from the rims of the Fae. For sure. And but cryptids and everything, that's an interesting one, especially when you go to the places and everything and check it out, the areas. That can get weird.
Yeah. I quite enjoyed Nick Redfern did a book on Chupacabra. I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I've interviewed Nick many times. It's been a while. I had heard that, not to get into this too deeply, and prayers to him, that he's going through some dementia situation or something like that, and that's why he can't do interviews, or he may not be doing them anymore. That's what a publisher told me, but hopefully he's doing better, or hopefully.
Oh wow, I haven't heard that. Yeah, I knew him, and we shared a love of Oasis together, and I enjoyed having dinner with him and stuff.
Yeah, that's one of his publishers.
Because I haven't heard anything from him, and I know normally he comes out with about 100 books a month.
Yeah.
Seems to be that way. Yes.
Yeah, he's
a trusted source said it, early onset dementia.
Oh my
God. I don't know if he's right. I don't know. I know I couldn't get him on for a werewolf book, and I guess that was the reason. I didn't know it, but a publisher told me that. But prayers to him for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And but everything. So does the UFO thing pop up ever?
Well, yeah, I actually part of my start into the paranormal was with UFOs, writing Freedom Information Act, getting documents from the government. In the old days, I had to pay for them too, $15 for this, $10 for that. You know? And I'd sent away from the interlibrary loan for newspaper articles, and it was all old school. I had to wait, but I got them. Because I used to read the UFO books, and you'd see they'd use these things as proof. And I remember a buddy of mine said, "Well, how do you know that? How do you know they're just not making that up?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's a good point. Let me see the sources." So I always tried to get as close to the source as I could. So I'd send away from the newspaper article or the government document they referenced, and see if I get it myself. And I get it myself, and then I go to my buddy and say, "Yeah, look, it's just like it was in the book." So, not that everything in all the books are true, but that's how I get my leads of, what articles to look for in order and stuff. So I was heavily into UFOs. Not as far as seeing them, because I don't think I'm bright enough to distinguish what I'm looking at in the sky. So I'll be honest about that. But when it comes to, research like the documents and stuff, I was heavily into that. And have quite a library of UFO books too. So yes, quite a fan of that. Yeah.
My situation is I've had a lot of UFO situations where I've seen them above in the sky with some witnesses and my mother to family members and things. And you deal with it when it seems like it's there for you, and you don't want to be an ego hound by any means, but when it's right there, it kind of seems like that. And I've had a lot of those, and there's a lot of situations where I don't remember things. And with that last show I did with Carter Bouchard, we got into hypnotism and stuff. Hypnotism. And I've never done that before, and I'm very reluctant to ever do it. But we were talking about it a lot, and it made me feel weird as hell, because I started thinking about all the UFO things that have happened, and there's a lot of them where I've seen a craft above me and I don't remember much else. I don't think I've been taken, but maybe I have. It might be why I have some crazy problems. But other than that,
Right.
I'd have to find someone I trusted. I know about the Emma Woods case, so that's scary. You have to be careful finding someone to hypnotize you. It's probably expensive too, so that's not going to happen. But maybe it's like I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I know in the Communion Christopher Walken movie, and I've read those books and everything, that he goes crazy from his stuff and almost shoots his wife in the movie. And I don't know if in the book, I've read all the books, but I don't remember them. But that's what made him finally go to a shrink in the movie anyway, which is supposed to be based on the book.
Right.
But yeah. Christopher Walken and Aliens, Gray Aliens. That's the best reason to watch that one.
Yeah, exactly.
You gonna do what with that probe? I can't do Christopher Walken that good. But I can do Jack Nicholson. We like probes. That's right. Probes happen. Probes indeed. But yeah, the show I was talking about that I was supposed to watch one year, it's called The Man in the High Castle. And basically it's weird Nazi stuff. But I'm sure there's like heroes in it or whatever, but I guess it's like I don't know. It's on Amazon, but it's Philip K. Dick. I'll watch it one year. It's on my list of things to watch one year. There's so many things I can't keep up with it. Did you see that Penguin show on HBO? That was actually really good. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, the Batman situation. It was
no, I haven't. No.
It was actually very good. Very kind of Sopranos-ish, but a little weirder, but but it was actually really good. Edgar quit that. My dog. But so hold on just a second. The water bottle. He has a hump problem. I don't want to get him neutered, but I may have to. I don't even think that would stop him. It's like the dog, the pig, the cat. It's like, will you stop it? Are you possessed? This dog, he's out of control. But so what other kind of weird movies are you? Street Trash. That's pretty weird. You got anything else weird there?
Oh, geez. Remember that movie? What was it? Fast Food? Was it the one with Rick Moranis in it, where the aliens come down to capture humans because they make fast food out of them?
That sounds familiar. Oh, yeah, Fast Food. I don't know if I've seen that. Fast Food, 1989. I looked it up. I don't think I've seen it.
89 at that late, huh? Huh.
Like 19, it may be a different movie.
Does that have Rick Moranis in it?
Yep, there he is in the picture. Yep.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
I'll have to remember that one. Wait, did it have the dude from? There may be several of them because they're showing the Ernest guy on the front of one of these things. The guy that played Ernest, Ernest P. Worrell.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So there might be a couple of them, several movies, all fast food.
Who else is in it? But it's a weird one. It's definitely original.
I'll have to check it out. There was a weird. They did a graphic novel of Ernest and the Dreamstone on Kickstarter not too long ago. I was supposed to have it coming. I actually bought it. It's only like 20 something bucks, but it's like the family was involved and got some of the proceeds. But basically, they did like a weird Ernest comic book, a graphic novel of Ernest. It's called Ernest and the Dreamstone. But let me see. I don't know. As far as me, I normally usually vote to the left, but I mean, now I'm just so fed up with left, right, up, down, and all the labels and put you in a box and blah, blah, blah. There's just so many. And then my job's weird because I have to look at right-wing headlines every day that's just completely insane and could probably make someone go insane from having to read them every day. But anyway, I just think everything that's happening right now, it just seems like a weird nightmare. And I get to see the headlines from every side. And I need a break from looking at them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But, because it's crazy. It is really. Like I even see some of the weird headlines on stuff that they try to do the QAnon, and like I see some of the headlines like from some of these radio people. It's frightening. It's scary. What were they talking about? All the gold in Fort Knox was missing. Was that the story that the gold is actually missing from Fort Knox?
Jeez, I didn't hear that one.
It hasn't been at Fort Knox forever. They removed it from Fort Knox years ago.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I mean, it hasn't been there forever. I mean, it's not in one place. It's split up. I mean, the gold reserves actually don't matter much anymore because they don't underlie our currency. So it really and haven't since the 1970s, since Nixon removed the gold standard. It was in 1972 or 1973. My understanding is that some of them they're in undisclosed places, and they were kept there in these undisclosed places because in the event of nuclear war. It was during the Cold War. So they haven't been. It hasn't been at Fort Knox forever. It's like God. It's like people.
Missing. Yeah. Well, they're not at my house, I'll tell you that.
Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. Not at all.
Yeah, they're trying to make it seem like Trump's looking for it in the headlines. Like, what happened to it? It's Obama stole it. But yeah, it's definitely nuts. As far as what's some of the weirder stuff? I mean, you have cryptic cases come up, but people get a hold of you to like share their encounters with you, and like, do you get different cryptid reports?
No, not so much cryptid. Normally, it's of the parasite nature. Not necessarily poltergeist, but same basic variety, garden variety parasites, where you have to break the frequency of thought that's causing this thing to continue to manifest.
That's interesting. What are some ways to do that? I mean, what positive affirmations come to mind. I've been trying to do that more since I felt like Darth Vader for a few months there. So I started try to do my affirmations again from some books I have.
Right, definitely. And it's, it's a little bit different for every person, but it really depends on what brings them some peace. But and it's tough to do because sometimes people are in a situation where it's not a healthy household and they can't get out of the unhealthy household. And of course, you have to use more of those tools to maintain and keep it at bay. But it gets tougher then. But yeah, to break the frequency, it's like in Marcy's case. She ended up going to a Catholic school because they weren't going to send her back to the school where she's beat up. She ended up going to this Catholic school, and the teachers were nice to her, and the kids were nice to her. And that was a big catalyst to just having the poltergeist activity peter out. So, yeah, breaking the frequency whichever way you could. Paulino had a case where a joke book did it. So, but not that he thought that would have worked in the Lindley Street case, but I mean, just goes to show you anything that that could break that frequency and get the person unstuck from sending out those negative frequencies.
Does any other thing come up? I know music. That seems like to be a good one. I'll even find some of like chicks reading weird angel meditation stuff on YouTube. That actually y'all feel better after it.
Yeah. Oh, it really depends on the person. If they're a music lover, music certainly could help. But they have to change the way they're thinking, definitely.
There's a Violent Flame one. I was like, wow, I am the Violet Flame. I'll try it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Whenever I hear Violet Flame stuff, I think of like the I am and the Ballards and Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
That's it. That's where it comes from.
It's like I hear her voice talking like this, and this weird.
I've heard her do it. It's weird. That's where it came from, isn't it? Like that's where.
Well, she got it. Actually, it's before her. I mean that the Violet Flame stuff actually originates in like some new thought stuff and spiritualist stuff in the 19th century. But yeah, it was popularized by Ballard. What was his name? Guy Ballard, who wrote the I Am series or whatever it was, and then
the Great I Am guy.
Yeah, the Great I Am. Yeah, and then Elizabeth Clare Prophet. She founded a group that was like broken off. It was the Church Universal and Triumphant. That's what the name of the church was. And she was influenced by the Ballards. She like broke off of whatever their movement was. The I Am movement kind of started her own thing. You can find her on YouTube. I personally find her creepy. She's like one of the few people like that I just, and she died of Alzheimer's too.
Well, Guy, with his fake religion, he was supposed to live forever, and then he died, and the wife was there,
right,
having to explain it, right? So, he didn't die; he ascended into heaven.
It's like, yep. I'm sorry, he's dead. He's dead.
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah. Well, except they killed.
He didn't die; he ascended. Yeah,
it's like. Well, yeah. Well, the problem with that is that I have to take that on faith. I just see his body there. I don't know what he did.
Right.
I have no idea what he did.
Well, I mean, they lost some followers, but the story was some people went to the police with just a towel around them because they gave everything they owned to the church.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
It's amazing to me that stuff is still around. Honestly, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, I grew up with it like in the 70s and 80s, and that alongside, Midwestern fundamentalism. Those were kind of like the two things that I grew up with, and they seemed very similar to me, just using different language.
It's true.
equally weird, but so it's just amazing to me that that stuff is still around. People are still doing it. I don't
Yeah, and even exposés on YouTube. I remember Amazing Randy exposed. What was it? That guy Piper Popovich or whatever.
Popovich, yeah,
Yeah,
Popovich.
who was using the ear microphones and getting signals from the wife as she was letting people in, or here rest yourself in this chair, and they'd put the lady in a wheelchair, and then later he'd say stand, and she'd stand up, and everybody would applaud, but she was never crippled, that stuff, and they'd have and Randy did an expose on it and actually it's on YouTube where you can hear. He did it so you can hear the signals back and forth, what they're saying to each other, and the guy went bankrupt, and now he's a multimillionaire again, doing the same thing. So YouTube heard him for a little while, but even an expose, the people, they don't watch those videos. Those aren't their videos.
Right.
A video putting down their guy, who wants to see that? So he ended up regaining $1 million. I can't believe it. Only in America. Only in America.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all I have to do is just look around at what's going on. And it's like, it's not that everybody is stupid, but there is a lot of dumb.
Yeah, there's a market for it, and there's enough of a market for it where, yeah.
And right,
gather them together.
And are we rammed by Russia now? And is Trump about to Benedict Arnold us? Because he really seems like he's doing a lot of weird shit, like he always does. Doesn't he? It's so weird. You're just like, what the hell is he doing? Like I see titles like he's closing the Department of Education or something, and people are being weirdest stuff.
Well, even worse than that, of course, this is like completely. There's going to be lawsuits galore, but apparently this has just happened. I'm looking at. I have the AP and Reuters apps on my phone, so I get these notifications about all the BS as it's coming, as it's floating towards us. But basically, the Trump administration has ordered Columbia University to oust the leadership of an academic department. Federal officials have told Columbia University it must immediately place its Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies departments under academic receivership for a minimum of five years, unless that was one of the conditions for receiving federal funding. That's like completely unconstitutional. I mean, do you know what receivership is? I mean, a lot of people don't even know what that is. Basically, what that is it's when you permit an external authority to govern or to oversee a department or a program in a university or college. I can't even recall a time it's ever been done tried to be done by the federal government. Usually those things are done by state governments, and it's usually done when there's a financial problem of some type with the university. There's been some kind of an emergency like that. But to have members of the government come in and just try to take over departments at a major university, research institution, it's bizarre.
Yeah,
and they're firing park rangers, aren't they? Like forest park.
Well, the problem is that they're firing people, and then they're realizing they need to bring them back, because.
What the hell are they even doing?
Because Doge doesn't know what it's doing, so they'll just walk in and start firing people, and then they realize, oh, we actually need these 2,000 people for the FAA, or we actually, you know what I mean? It's bizarre.
Just like a corporation. That's what they would do. They'd
Right.
lay a bunch of people and then hire them back, but they would do it strategically. They lay them off and hire back at much lower salaries.
Right. Well, and they're trying to treat this like, or at least the Doge people are trying to treat this like it's a corporation, and the government is not a corporation. You know, none of these positions are profit-making positions. They're not supposed to be. You know, actually, we fund all these positions.
Oh yeah.
You know, all of that comes
We're the
from
profit.
us. What?
We're the profit.
Well, yeah, that's why they're taking this over, so that they can take the wealth and our wealth and give it to themselves. I understand that. I understand that that's what the goal is, but it's like, yeah, there's so many things that are happening every day that I've decided that I can only focus on some of it. You know, the things that concern me specifically, and it's not that I'm not concerned with other things. I just keep you just can't keep track of it all.
Yeah.
And I'm a news hound. I mean, I watch the news obsessively because that's the way I've always been, and I can't keep track of all of it. So
Yeah, it's definitely just too much. It'll make you crazy. But as far as I don't know, it just seems like he's trying to get us, like, I don't know, prepare us to be like, let them invade us or something, or let another virus through and all that. It's just so many levels of horror to it. It's like a Stephen King movie.
well,
It's like
it is.
Yeah.
It's like The Stand, sort of, in a weird kind of way.
It's like a Batman villain in the White House. I don't want to ruin Joker, but it's one of them. Not I don't know which one, but one of them, like the Mad Hatter. But no, that Penguin show is really good. Colin Farrell, you can't even tell it's him, but it's creepy. Like, it's really good though, and the lady that's in it's really good. A lot of mafia stuff. It gets a little weird, but supposedly they're doing it's from the guy that did the newest Batman with Robert Pattinson and Paul Dano as the Riddler, which that was good. It was good, but and there's actually some cutout footage of the Joker that I forget the dude's name, but there's supposed to be the Joker in the next one. But the guy that made that movie did the series on HBO, and it's probably got like 90s on Rotten Tomatoes. It's definitely worth checking out. They're supposed to be doing an Arkham Asylum show on HBO. I'm really hoping that. Yeah, like it's just supposed to be like different cases from Arkham Asylum of the villains or whoever's in there or whatever, different like episodes, kind of like an anthology kind of thing. But I don't know if it got canceled or not. But so what's some of your favorite cryptids? We got about, God, we're supposed to end at 5 till. What's some of your favorite cryptids that you love trolls, but what else? What about Bigfoot?
Favorite? Oh, well, Bigfoot, of course. Yeah. And that's quite fascinating. And it's quite fascinating the way that whenever you have haunted houses, if you have one haunted house, you should check the area because there's often other activity in the area. But also you tend to have, I remember a stat that came out that was 83% of the time you have UFO sightings, there's haunted houses. And sometimes there's the Bigfoot sightings in conjunction. So I think these things don't necessarily hang out with each other, but they ride the same bus, so to speak. According to legends and cases, it seems like if you have a flap area, you have all three, and maybe a cryptid or two.
Yeah, it really gets weird when there's like I know Carter was the last guest was talking about some people having some alien encounters where the aliens were all Bigfoot on the ship running the ship. They were all Sasquatch, like they were in charge, like they had a whole UFO, like Wookiees.
Yeah.
Someone woke up during it or something. It was a case, but there's been a lot of Dogman stuff. Has any of that come up at all? That's interesting. Definitely,
Yeah,
that's
it's interesting.
that's the creepiest. That's one of the creepiest.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Mothman, of course, that's a fascinating story. Um, but yeah, with the Bigfoot, I never was interested until I heard some people speak on it and saw some films and 911 calls and then some families that experienced it, and then it's pretty common up in Massachusetts. It seems like um, it's well known by them in some of the forests there.
Yeah, it's yeah, well, I wasn't terribly interested in Bigfoot either until I moved to the Hudson Valley and had a sighting myself, and it completely freaked me out. I mean, I was just completely like a UFO person. And then I found out that this is another area where people see things like that sometimes. And so yeah, it's kind of weird how experiences can suddenly, or information can suddenly change your mind, you know.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and boy, that'll definitely do it. A sighting.
Yeah, it was a real classic sighting. It was like one of those where, I was coming. I mean, I've told the story many times. I taught an evening class, and I was coming. I was staying at a friend's house. I wasn't going all the way home because at the time I had to commute really far. So I had an early morning. I had taught an evening class and then an early morning class. So I would just stay at her house rather than go all the way home. And so she lived in kind of a rural area in Dutchess County, New York. And I was just making my way to her house, this kind of isolated stretch of road that was forested on either side. And I turned a corner. It was dark. It was nighttime. It was like 9:30 at night. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was thinking about my class, and I was watching for deer because deer always run out in front of you, you know. Um, and I turned a corner, and my headlights came around, and about 200 yards in front, well, not 200, maybe 100 yards in front of me. Um, it was 200 yards to the other end of where a sign was, but it was about 100 yards in front of me. There was this big, huge, my headlights caught this big, huge, upright, hairy thing crossing the road in front of me. And it was traveling pretty quickly. And then when my lights hit it, it raised an arm like this to I startled it, and then it really sped up. I mean, it was like pew, and it was gone. And I remember I just stopped the car in the middle of the road, and I just stopped there, and I was like, what did I just see? Did I just see what that looked like? You know what I mean? It just it freaked me out. I mean, it scared me. And I mean, it took me a little bit of time, like 5 minutes or so to actually get myself to the car never went off or anything, but it never turned off. But in order to have enough courage to actually drive past the place where it had crossed. And, that started me sort of on a search. I came by that way the next day in the morning, to see if there was anything. I went back to that area several times to try to calculate its size. I was finally able to calculate its size because there was like a street sign that was close to where it had passed.
Excellent.
So, It was about 8 feet tall,
I would have guessed 8 feet.
about 8 feet tall.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was when then I started doing internet searches, and that's when I discovered Gail Beatty, who is a founder of the Hudson Valley Bigfoot Research Group. And I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know anything about any of that. And so I contacted her and found out that, while the Hudson Valley is not like the hottest spot for such things, there's a long history of people seeing things like that on occasion. Like going back to the 18th and 19th century.
Yeah,
So,
that area, Hudson Valley, and if you follow that road all the way up into Connecticut, you'll get to
right.
the Litchfield County area where there's paranormal flap areas. So yeah, a lot of activity.
Yeah, I mean, well, Litchfield is just to the east. It's just to the east and north of where I live. I mean, Connecticut's only about 35 miles as the crow flies from where I live. I mean, it takes longer than that to get there because the roads and traffic, but it's not that far. I mean, once I get to where I work, because I work in Dutchess County, once I get to where I work, I can see the hills of Connecticut really clearly from where I am. So, yeah, it's and then if you go north, like even north, up Highway 9 through Dutchess County into Columbia County, you'll get to Kinderhook and Chatham, where in the early 1980s there was a flap that was called the Kinderhook creature, and that is just south and west a little bit as the crow flies, by about 40 miles from Whitehall. If you're familiar with the Whitehall or the Bear incident, which was a very, very famous cryptid sighting that occurred. I guess it was in the late 80s. No, the late 70s. So that whole area, as you go north and then into kind of turn towards Vermont and Massachusetts up there, into the Berkshires.
That's Bruce Hallenbach, right? That's his book, right?
Well, Bruce Hallenbach is the guy that that wrote extensively about the Kinderhook creature. Yeah, because his family's house was one of the centers of the activity. So he's written a couple of books has written extensively about it. In my book, I interview him. In fact, I had a conversation with him earlier this week because it turned out that I was contacted last week. This is something that we all have to be careful about. Even you have to be careful about this. I found out, I was contacted by a couple of people who found out that there's a woman who has published a book called Lost Columbia County. And in that book, she plagiarized like 7 different people in order to write that book, including a paragraph from my book, Mysterious Beauty. And so I was told about that by other people who had their stuff plagiarized as well. And so, one of these people is somebody who knows Bruce. So anyway, I had some conversation with him, but I had to actually, to get them to re-edit the portion that the woman plagiarized, I had to threaten them with a legal suit. I had to actually, I got a hold of the publisher and I was like, listen, it only costs me $250 to file a lawsuit with you. So, and I've got that money right now. So it's like you better change it. You know.
I want to line Bruce up for a Hammer horror discussion for maybe in the fall.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, do you need his info?
He's on my Facebook, but if I need anything, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
I'm just sure because last time I know he just had a phone, and it was okay, but it was kind of weird. I don't know if he's upgraded any or anything, but it was on a phone. But it turned out okay. It was a little tech stuff at first, but hopefully, I think he's out in the boonies. I'll have to check with him, but I'll corner him down. But yeah, if I need anything, I'll let you know. But so Bill, we got about 5 minutes. Wow, what a great show. You ever saw anyone in half?
No, I couldn't afford those kinds of
those Terrifier movies. They're really good, but they're violent, and it's like just horrible. Like it's like I could watch it a couple of times, but I feel sick after. But they're really good, and I know the guy that plays the clown, and they're great. But the violence, God, it's a little too much at times, and I like horror movies, but even in those, it's like they're just gruesome. Like I have people throwing up in the theater and the garbage cans and stuff. Like it's really a little too. Like I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but it's really good effects and realistic, and it's just sick. So I'll watch it once, maybe twice, once in a blue moon, but probably not like a bunch. It is over the top. I like subtle horror with creatures and stuff, like ghoulies.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to watch those again. A little green thing trolls coming out of the toilets from Black Magic. I want to watch those Warlock movies again. I know that dude. God, now I'm forgetting his name. The guy that passed away from snowing, the skiing and stuff. Julian Sands. Yeah, I wouldn't mind watching those Warlock movies. That guy passed away, but it's been great, Bill. What's some linkage? You got any linkage or anything? Anything you want to share?
Yes, if you go to halloftheparanormal.com, you can get signed copies of any of my books, including the new companion guide. If you don't have the original Bridgeport Poltergeist book, you can get that there too. And again, that's at Hall, HALL, of theparanormal.com.
Very cool.
Other paranormal stuff, and I'll send you extra stuff if you mention
extra
this
stuff.
show. You got to mention this show.
Church of Mabus, do it.
Stuff anyhow.
Church of Mabus. Church of Mabus.
Right. I called it that a long time ago to piss people off, and now I'm like, man, what did I do? It's like Bruce Campbell and the Necronomicon. I just can't leave stuff alone. Come on in, get a piece of chicken and a balloon. Welcome to the murder ride. But next week, first off, you listen to United Public Radio 107.7 FM New Orleans. Next week is a Kickstarter dude that I met who does a comic called Frankenstein the Unconquered, like a weird Frankenstein situation. So I'm sure we'll get into all kinds of weirdness. Wells Thompson. And then the next guest, Jimmy Blue. This is going to be a unique one. Jimi Hendrix impersonator, Al Green impersonator. He looks like Little Richie. So that's going to be a good one. I don't think he's going to be impersonating anyone, so I'm sure he'll just be in his regular garb. But that should be a good one. I have to ask Mark everything I'm asking. That's one of Mark's people that he knows from publicity. I need to get a hold of him, make sure I got all the paperwork for that one. But it's going to be a good one. That's March Madness. Everybody hang tight. We'll see you next Friday. And thanks for listening. You listen to Church of Mabus Radio. Go to churchofmabusradio.com. It'll drop you right in our Facebook group. God help you. Have a good night, everybody, and have a good weekend. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Wham. And
thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Good night.